Solution Talk, empowering young entrepreneurs in Africa. Please welcome onto the stage Mavis Owusu-Gyamfi from African Center for Economic Transformation.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies. Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this afternoon's session. I'm really looking forward to this discussion between young people and the individuals who make decisions for young people. Now, at the African Center for Economic Transformation, we organize a lot of intergenerational dialogue. So I feel that this is a bit of an intergenerational dialogue on young entrepreneurship. And we are here because we know entrepreneurship really matters for our beloved continent, Africa. It is critical to our development and our transformation. And earlier on, you heard a lot about how much Africa needs more jobs, Africa needs more jobs. Well, these jobs start with entrepreneurs. It starts with our young entrepreneurs. Now, more than 1 in 5 working-age Africans are starting a new business. And 3/4 of young Africans are planning to start one in the next 5 years. Alongside that, we have the highest proportion of female entrepreneurs in the world. More than 1/4 of all of our businesses were actually started and run by women. Now, despite this, our women entrepreneurs face a 47 billion funding gap, according to the African Development Bank. Now, at a time when Africa is struggling with finances, it's criminal that 50% of our population cannot access finance. The other challenge we also have is that a lot of our entrepreneurs are micro, small enterprises. 10,000, thousands and thousands and thousands of micro and small enterprises. We're bored of micro and small enterprises, sorry. We want to see a few more medium and large enterprises. And one of the biggest challenges to our entrepreneurs becoming medium and large is access to finance. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. But we're going to start with the policymakers. We can get the banks, we can get the finance institutions, but if the policymakers do not create the environment for these entrepreneurs to thrive, for the financial institutions to fund these entrepreneurs, then we are spinning in a cycle. So we have 2 policymakers. And I'd like to begin by welcoming Her Excellency Marupon Ramagoppa, the Minister for Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation from South Africa, to deliver her remarks. And Minister, we would really like to hear from you about how African governments can support our young entrepreneurs locally at the country level, but also to take advantage of regional value chains in the continent.
Thank you very much and good afternoon. Thank you, Mavis, and thank you everyone for this opportunity. I think it's afternoon already. We're really excited, of course, to be here, and let me also take this opportunity to acknowledge, of course, my counterpart, the Minister of International Development from Norway, and the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs is here as well, and the wonderful ladies that I've just met here today, and everybody else that is here. In fact, Mavis, I would like to disagree with you a little bit. The micro enterprises are quite important. What we need to do is to make them work. We need to create an enabling environment for them to work, and we've been able to try to do that in South Africa. We are trying to come up with that by creating something that is called the township economy, to say, what are you doing wherever you are? How do we then now make sure that works? I think that is another topic that we need to talk about, so that when tourists come to South Africa or they come to any other country, how do we make sure that you can then now be able to attract them and make money out of that because you are an entrepreneur? But definitely having medium enterprises moving to large enterprises, that's definitely something that we would like to definitely support and create an enabling environment through partnerships, through investment, but also through making sure that when large enterprises do business or do participate wherever they are, we do encourage them to also open up space for medium enterprises to also learn, but to also get something out of whatever processes that are taking place. Today I stand, of course, before you with a message of hope, opportunity, and vision. Africa is bursting with potential, of course, driven by an unprecedented surge in youth energy, creativity, and an entrepreneurial spirit. Unlike before, we do not just speak of Africa on a potential alone. We are seeing an action and innovation towards this being an African century. That's what we believe. To unlock this vast potential even more, we must make a collective effort to empower the very group that holds the key to Africa's future, our young entrepreneurs, our young people. In a world defined by innovation, rapid change, and technological advances, Africa's youth are not merely spectators. They are the drivers of change. From financial technology, agriculture, renewable energy, and creative sector to digital health solutions, young African entrepreneurs are transforming their communities. They are also creating jobs and reshaping economies as well. Despite this, the journey for many young entrepreneurs is filled with challenges. We all know that. Access to finance, mentorship, like I've just been saying now, from larger enterprises, training and relevant networks remains limited to many. This presents to the governments, many governments and private sector and international organizations, just like you said, Mavis, the opportunity to actually take action. Ladies and gentlemen, empowering young entrepreneurs and addressing the barriers faced, such as bridging the financial gap, is of great importance if we are to raise potential of African continent and accelerate action, and also help all the other countries in the continent, of course, to meet the sustainable goals. And this is why. I will give you an example, and I think this was done with one of the agencies of UN. We had a process where businesses, especially big conglomerates in South Africa, would come and report on the SDGs, how they've been doing, how they've been actually contributing to our own agenda as it relates to making sure that we contribute to the SDGs. Firstly, Africa, of course, has a demographic advantage, and it is undeniable. According to the United Nations Population Fund, about 60% of Africa's population is currently under the age of 25, young enough to be my grandchildren, with a population of people under the age of 25 in the continent expected to grow to about 1.4 billion by the year 2063. This is evident by financing businesses, and this definitely allow us to actually, as I've already said, prioritize young people in whatever plans that we have. Secondly, we definitely need jobs. According to the African Development Bank estimates, each year around 12 million youths in Africa enter a workforce that can only be able to take about 3.1 million jobs. And we've got 12 million that are actually ready to actually enter into the job market. We train and develop youth to be ready for the workforce, but there are not enough jobs. As governments, we need to put entrepreneurship at the center of our interventions and policies to create jobs. We need to incentivize and support young entrepreneurs by addressing the red tapes in government and in bigger enterprises, and making financing available for young entrepreneurs through grants and tailor-made public-private partnership to address funding inequalities which particularly affect our young entrepreneurs. Thirdly, Innovation is in our DNA. That's what we do best. From Lagos to Nairobi, Johannesburg to Accra, young Africans are at the forefront of global technological innovations. We have seen how young people in countries like Kenya have done so well as it relates to this. They are solving local challenges with homegrown solutions, such as developing new apps, services, and business models that meet the unique needs of African markets. We need to reward and support this solution thinking, as those innovations will propel us to the future. We shouldn't only support them, but we should also create platforms where they can be able to do their work. We must also break down the barriers of funding. And I think everybody's talking about is the buzzword now. When you talk about the SDGs, the reason we have only been able to achieve 15% of it, only 17 SDGs, 15% of it, is precisely because there is no funding. So we really need to start talking about that. Not talk, but also put systems in place to try and make sure that we can evaluate if we are moving forward or not. Entrepreneurship is not just about ideas, as I already said, it's also about execution, and we cannot stress that more than I've already done. We must also invest in capacity building and education that fosters creativity, problem solving, and business acumen. From mentorship programs to entrepreneurial boot camps, we need to equip young people with the skills they need to scale up their businesses. You have already spoken about that, but I still feel that we shouldn't really forget more about micro enterprises. The time is now. Empowering young entrepreneurs is not just about the moral imperative. It is an economic and developmental imperative, as a sustainable future for Africa depends on it. By investing in our youth and also opening up financial opportunities for young entrepreneurs on the continent, we are not only building businesses, but we are also building the future of Africa. We are creating a continent where young people do not just look beyond our shores for opportunities because they can create them, but they also know that there are opportunities out there. We had an opportunity, of course, as the South African government to also have a trip to the UK, and we met a lot of funders that were saying from development to banks as well, financial institutions, and we have spoken about how do we ensure that that enabling environment is not only being opened by government, but we do see private sector coming on board in partnership to ensure that those policies that we put in place does see the light of the day. But also on research and innovation, we also need support on that. We need to support young people so that they can be equipped with what it takes to be able to do their best in whatever it is that they are putting their mind on. We all were young at once. I was a youth activist, and I know how important this is. At times, young people, of course, feel like you talk, we can't see anything. But I really do believe that this is the time where we can then now be able to say, together with young people, let us not only create an enabling environment, but let us put systems in place to ensure that whatever it is that we are talking about takes place, but we put systems in place again to monitor and evaluate if those things that they're doing are actually moving the needle. Because at times we do talk, we do things, but if they are not moving the needle, we're not going to be able to achieve that which has actually brought us here today. So thank you very much. That would be my opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And you were right to tell me off. I am the product of a micro-entrepreneur. So you were right to tell me off. Minister, you talked about a number of issues, a number of policy, the policies that are required to drive this agenda. But I think for me, the biggest takeaway is your final point on measurement. What we don't measure, we don't actually focus on. So I think the fact that you really talked about we must measure progress towards young entrepreneurs growing and thriving, including the micro enterprises. Only if they generate at least one job each, then we will work. Then we are there. At this point, I would really like to invite on the stage Your Excellency Anne Beate Tiverenum. She is currently the Minister for International Development for Norway, and I'd like to really hear from you, Minister, your views on the European perspective on how investments in African business can be facilitated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mavis. Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. Minister, colleagues, friends. You know, we politicians my age keep saying this, that, you know, youth is the future. And every time I say that, my daughter back home rolls her eyes, and heard that before. But it's true, though. And it's especially true for the African continent. African youth constitute 60% of the population. Which is why youth engagement and involvement is central in Norwegian foreign and development policies. In our recent Africa strategy, in our action plan for equality, just to mention a few. But, colleagues, words, political documents need to be matched by concrete action and investment. So, as a donor, we need to take a holistic approach to job creation. Financing entrepreneurs is not enough. We need to build an entrepreneurial culture that supports solid institutional and regulatory frameworks. For instance, Norway has supported a capacity building program where 3,000 SMEs in East Africa have received training in digital skills and online marketing. We have seen that several of those SMEs have gained access to credit through first loss schemes. One of those was established by the African Guarantee Fund, who is here today, I believe. Here you are. Last year, Norway sent out a tender targeting incubators and accelerators in sub-Saharan Africa. We now have agreements with 11 incubators, accelerators, and financial institutions, and together they support thousands of companies. Our focus is, to be concrete, renewable energy, blue economy, agriculture, climate, and technology. And I'm pleased to see Jules of the African Guarantee Facility here today. He represents one of our partners. Ultimately, this tender will create new jobs for the young African generation. And the goal of this program is to ensure access to affordable financing and tailored, cost-effective training. And this strategy is closely aligned with the objectives of the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank. Now, we have evidence that our work with incubators and accelerators support growth, employment, and successful entrepreneurship for youth. Another example I'd like to mention is Antler. This is a global incubator and business accelerator from Norway. Initially, Antler was quite hesitant to expand into Africa due to perceived risk. I'm not saying actual risks, but perceived risks. However, with financial support from Norway, they established an office in East Africa. And that led to the creation of a $16 million fund with private investors, which is now projected to grow to $50 million. Great success. The results have been impressive. Norwegian aid has catalyzed private investments amounting to 20 to 30 times the initial funding. So using ODA to take some leverage off, or to take some risk off and leverage private funding really works. Finally, let me also mention the Norwegian Development Finance Institution, which is called Norfund. Norfund employed more than 400,000 people in companies operating in Africa, and that is almost 65% of total employees in Norfund's portfolio companies. Now, I mention these examples because I want to focus on what works. We know what works. We know what we can do. We just need to do more of it. So in closing, people, friends, colleagues, every year, thousands and thousands of eager young people are entering into the workforce. Investing in them is an investment in the SDGs. And we speak so much about how hard it is to reach the SDGs. It's an uphill battle and, we're losing progress. But let us just speak more of the opportunities and the investments that actually work. So that's why I'm excited to be here today. Thank you very much.
Minister, can you stay for 1 second? Your Excellency, may I invite you for 1 second? I'm going to break protocol, sorry. I'm going to break protocol. We have in this room a number of very dynamic young African entrepreneurs. I'm going to give one woman and one man an opportunity to ask our policymakers a question or to tell them if you disagree with what they've said. Yeah. So hands up. Are you a young entrepreneur? You are, okay. Okay, so I'm going to go from one here and one here. You had your hand up first, so over to you, young lady.
Thank you so much. It sounds really exciting what you've described. And my name is Ebun Feludu. I'm a coconut farmer and processor from Nigeria. My company is called Kokari Coconuts and Company. And I've heard a lot from South Africa and East Africa. I'm just wondering where West Africa is in your agenda. Thank you.
Okay. There's a young man over there.
Thank you. My first question was about West Africa, but also in particularly French-speaking countries, because there are a lot of funds coming to fund entrepreneurs in Africa, but I think less than 20% are for French-speaking Africa. So this is the first thing. The second thing is...
one question.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I'm being tight on this one. So I'll hand over. Minister, our young lady talks about West Africa. I would love to hear your views on how we help young West Africans link up with South Africa.
The good part about that, and thank you for that, the AFCTA, it is now being operationalized. And the good part again is that it has been agreed that all countries that are in the AU must actually have a set aside. It's not that much, but 30% of it must actually be women and young women to actually participate and be given an opportunity and preferential treatment as it relates to trading. So that I do believe that is one other platform that we can actually utilize. But besides utilizing that with our own bilateral trade, we do have programs that we can actually work together on. And we have already worked together on, as far as I know, as it relates to making sure that we do increase the trade. Maybe what we will have to do is just to ensure that we link you up with that, because it becomes important and very exciting to have young women that are actually in food security. That is quite important. We actually have one of our ambassadors, I'm not sure she's still here, there she is, of South Africa. She's in Rome and she's specializing in agricultural produce and agricultural value chain. So those are some of the things that we would really love to talk to you about, so that whatever it is that we're doing, both in South Africa and globally, it does make sure that we at least make sure that we do speak to Africa, not just South Africa, because we are one big continent.
Thank you, Minister. And you saw the lady, right? So make sure you go straight there. Minister, I'd love to hear your views from the young gentleman who says that financing to Africa does not get to Francophone Africa.
Well, my apologies for all these examples on East Africa. Norfund, which is the big, the really big chunk, the strongest mechanism I have for leveraging private investment in Africa, works across the continent. Like I briefly mentioned, also in Francophone Africa, definitely. Can I just mention one other mechanism that I would love to showcase? Speaking of food security. Norway, together with USAID, is now launching. We are just launching now, getting more investors on board. So if there are anyone eager to invest, please raise a hand. It's called the FASA Fund. And this is a financing mechanism that is focusing on the value chains in food production, and especially small entrepreneurs, because we know that there are some entrepreneurs in the value chains of food production that falls between two chairs. They are too small for private banking, too big for microfinance. And this fund is the first in its kind that actually addresses those entrepreneurs specifically. And I'm very excited about that, because we know that the African continent next year will import foodstuffs worth okay, I don't know it in US dollars. It's $1 1,000 billion Norwegian crowns. It's an immense amount of, yeah, exactly, 10 billion, right? This is such a lost opportunity, importing these foodstuffs from other continents. So, you know, getting that job creation done and the value chains from the food producers to the local regional market, that is such a huge opportunity. So that's where we want to invest.
Thank you. So can we give our ministers a big round of applause, please? Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now, those of you in the food sector, FASA, go and Google it. Next year, when we're here, we'll want to know how many of you accessed FASA. Okay. At this point, I'd like to invite two colleagues to the stage. Ahmed Atoute from the African Development Bank and Ms. Melanie Cater, CEO and co-founder of the Melanin Capital Neobank. So this is where it gets really exciting. This is where the banker that says he's serving entrepreneurs, that's the pitch, and the entrepreneur says whether it's working or not. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, and thank you for exposing me. And good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today, and really thanks to our colleagues from the government of Germany for their excellent organization and for hosting us today. Thank you for everything. Okay, so let me go quickly to the challenge we're facing in Africa. Of course, Her Excellency said it clearly. Africa is a fast-growing population. We are in need for 1.7 million jobs a month for the youth under the age of 35. We have heard about the 60%, 70% under the age of 35. The number, whatever the percentage is huge, and there is a need for a solution. We at the African Development Bank, we see youth as an asset class, as the most precious wealth for Africa and for the African countries, and I think that's why we have thought differently on how to make the youth as job creators rather than job seekers. And I think that's really the whole methodology. This is exactly what we're currently doing. And we have been doing a fantastic job through our human development team in creating all this kind of enabling environment, vocational training, making them ready for investments, understanding financial literacy, and so on and so forth. But it's not enough, because simply once they are ready, they are not bankable. They are perceived as extremely risky business, and there is no trust in them when it comes to doing business. That is why we have changed the way we are doing business into a programmatic and holistic approach. So we are now working, all of us, all the bank is working toward the youth. It is part of our 10-year strategy, 2024-2033, and the youth, investment in the youth is part of our business. And that is why we have decided as a bank to establish what we call the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks, which is really a programmatic, again, and a holistic approach, and I mean it, because it really goes throughout the value chain of funding a new business led by a youth, be it a man or a woman. So the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks, in a very easy word, it's a one-stop shop that can give youth access to finance in form of guarantees, in form of technical assistance, and also we are leveraging our experience when it comes to private equity funds, venture capital, and putting in place this kind of mechanism. So, in a nutshell, if a youth is bankable in a country where we have the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks, you don't have to go through different windows. It is one-stop shop. It is not easy. Don't be happy. It takes time. So we are really pushing together to make it a reality. Last year, I believe, Marta, correct me, it was just an idea, but thanks to the bank team job, I think we have reached a new milestone. The milestone is that we have already a Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank in advanced implementation phase in Liberia, and the same in Ethiopia. In Liberia, it's $16 million. In Ethiopia, it's $43 million. We're moving next month to Nigeria, another 100 million. I think that's an answer for your question. Working with existing Development Bank of Nigeria, the NSIA, and And it's really leveraging the existing structures where it is possible in advanced markets relatively like Nigeria and Ethiopia, and creating new vehicles like in the case of Liberia. This is not the only solution for the youth. We also at the bank working on what we call the investments in digital and creative industries. Again, thanks to the human development team, they are pushing this very hard. They have had one already approved in Nigeria. They are pushing for Senegal. No need to mention about numbers, but they are really tens of millions of dollars, and they are really in advanced implementation stage. What is really important, and it's closely related to Her Excellency when she was talking about the policies, is that we are changing the DNA of the institution by putting everything in our policies. I mentioned the 10-year strategy. There is also the Jobs for Youth strategy. And also we are putting in place the affirmative finance action for women when it comes to women in business. And I think my colleague here will be talking more about it. But that's really a very high-level overview of what we are trying to do. This is a key for the sustainability of all of our investments. If youth in Africa are not satisfied and they are not finding their opportunities, we will all be in trouble and facing big challenges. And I think we are all in a well-positioned to at least minimize this risk. Thank you.
That was a fantastic pitch. Do you feel it at all as an entrepreneur?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your pitch, and thank you everyone for assisting at this session and for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here, and especially as a young woman entrepreneur, I can hear there's a lot of funding coming my way, so I'm extremely excited. So just a few words on what we do. We are Melanin Capital Neobank. We're basically a fintech. We we facilitate digital loans through our platform, and Ebon from Kokari here has been one of the recipients of our loan, actually. And this was facilitated from one of the projects of the bank, which is AFAWA, the Affirmative Action for Women in Finance. So now that I hear that there's a Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Bank where I can come as a young entrepreneur to have access to private equity funds, credit and guarantees, I'm very excited. And my first question is really to understand how, as a young entrepreneur, am I able to access those funds? Because we see a lot of announcements, right? We are really into the media and trying to find always funding opportunities. And what is very difficult for us to understand is what are the step-by-step process for us to access those millions. And being young, now I get to my second question. You know, we are a bit adverse sometimes with paperwork, right? I don't know if anyone got a loan on the continent, but sometimes you have the time to not be young anymore and actually be already married with kids. So we would like to understand, is there any digitization planned within this process where fintechs like us can also take part of this great program where we can deliver digital loans as well, so that people can access loans from their own living room instead of having to travel a lot of time and then go with a lot of paperwork and being denied loans sometimes. So that's the second question. And finally, we've had this morning from the World Development Bank president that will be 1.2 billion young people in the next 15 years, and we only have 400 million jobs that will be created. So it's a deficit of 800 billion. To be able to access that, we don't only need me that will create 20 jobs and then Ibon that will create 50 jobs. We need to have leaders of industries. And what is our plan with the African Development Bank and ministers, our distinguished ministers that we have here, to be able to deliver on those jobs? Are you prioritizing like large industries, like automotive, like we have in Germany, or many like Ibon and I, where we'll be able to create those jobs? Thank you.
No pressure, but you have 1 minute to answer all three.
All right. So she said 1 minute, so I'll try to go quickly through it. So how to access the funds is very easy. We are giving line of credits to different ways. So we're giving line of credits to financial institutions. There is what we call the the youth and gender marker. The youth marker will take place next year, but the gender marker is already in place. So this is number one. You will be able to go and to the commercial bank with the market that you are operating. The second one is the specialized funds, and we have here our partners, the Africa Guarantee Fund. They are working, they're partnering with us under the AFAWA. That's a great opportunity for women in business. We have now coming to your way, as you said, the Youth Entrepreneurship Investment Banks. It will take relatively quite some time to be operational, as I said. I'm just trying to manage expectations, but we are also having the Africa Digital Financial Inclusion Initiative, which is definitely in line with what you are trying to do. We are doing this in partnership with our partners from MasterCard Foundation and Gates Foundations and the French government. So it's really, and the government of Luxembourg. So it's really a good partnership that you can access grant funding for digital financing. Last but not least, there is no one solution for the youth problem. It's not only upstream, it's not midstream, it's not downstream. It is a 360-degree solution. So everything we are doing, and that's why the team from the Human Development, led by my colleague Marta, has come up with a youth marker, because everything we are doing should cover the youth. The line of credits, the trade facilitation, the infrastructure projects, the budget supports, governance, education, and so on and so forth. I don't want to take too much time, but what I want to say is that similar to climate finance, green energy, women in business, now youth is in the center of our business, and our DNA has already changed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you can take your seats now. Thank you very much. So young people, this is our bank, the African Development Bank. Are you feeling optimistic? Uh-oh. Young people, are we feeling optimistic? Yes. Ahmed, I fear there's more work to be done. At this stage, I'd like to invite Jules Ngankam, CEO of the African Development Fund, to join us, alongside Ms. Fadila Chumba, CEO of the Africa Business Angel Network. Now, Jules is going to give us his pitch. Now, remember again, it says Africa. Okay, so this is your guarantee fund. So Jules is going to do his pitch, and then Fadila is going to respond. So Jules, over to you.
Thank you very much. So I have a quick presentation to do. Yeah, so Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here today to share with you what has been AGF journey in unlocking finance to the youth entrepreneur in Africa. So, thank you. Do I need to point? Okay, so I'm not going to go to go too long on the problem statement. You know, that has been said here counted number of times on what are the challenges that the youth are facing in Africa when it comes to the youth population. You know, 8 to 11 million of young Africans, they go to the job market every year, but only 3 million jobs are created. So when we take that situation, it can be seen as an opportunity. Yes, we have a very young population, but that can also be a big challenge, a ticking bomb, if we don't come with the right solution. When we take also into account that type of population has now access to degrees, they are more and more kind of well connected, you know, on tools, on internet, yes, so they need to have access to jobs. So entrepreneurship can be seen as a long-term solution for Africa. But the biggest challenge that they are facing is access to finance. You know, that was mentioned earlier, the SME financing gap, because if we want to support the youth entrepreneur in Africa is by addressing this SME financing gap. Based on the statistics, that is a number from IFC, the SME financing gap in Africa is estimated to be at $330 billion. And AGF, this is our goal. How do we bridge this SME financing gap? We offer two solutions, guarantees for risk-sharing and capacity building. So the first question is to understand what is the reason of this SME financing gap. We do believe that the financing gap is a consequence of many other gaps. So to be able to address that financing gap, there are some gaps that we need to be able to bridge first. One of the gap is the information gap. It's mainly due to the fact that When an SME, they go to a bank, the bank, most of the time, they will ask for 3 years of financial statement. But as an entrepreneur, you are not in a position to have 3 years of business. Most of the time, maybe it's just 3 to 6 months. So how do we manage that? That brings an excess risk for the financial institution because they don't have access to all this data to be able to understand the type of risk that they're taking. And even in Africa, if we look at the number of countries with a well-functioning credit bureau, we have less than 10 countries in Africa with a well-functioning credit bureau. The information is also on the side of the SMEs because they don't understand the requirement from the bank. So this is where, through the guarantee, we can reduce that excess risk that the bank are taking as they lend to those SMEs that have not been able to provide them with the information that they need. We can also provide technical assistance. We want the bank to leverage on technology, big data technology, on AI. Okay, I have to go fast. The collateral gap is also one of the gaps, mainly due to the fact that the SME, they're not in the position to give to the banks what is required in terms of collateral. The next gap is the tenor gap. This is mainly the mismatch between the needs of the SME and what the bank can actually do. Most of the SME, to be able to grow, they don't need just working capital. They need long-term finance. But most of the time, the resources of the bank come from the depositors, so they cannot use short-term deposit to finance long-term projects. So that creates also a mismatch that we address with the guarantee. We support the bank depositors, or in case a bank, they want to issue a bond, we support also the bondholders so that they can mobilize long-term resources in the market. So the skill gap, that has been also covered, is something that we address to make sure that when they receive the money, they actually have the capacity to be able to kind of execute the project that they receive the money for. The product gap, this is mainly the fact that most of the time, the product that the bank are offering is not aligned to the need of the SME and mainly the business cycle. So we work together with the bank to offer a product that match the cash flows of the SMEs. We have the cost gap. SMEs that are complaining, the interest rate is very high. How do we also kind of address that? The perception gap, that one has been mentioned earlier, that gap between the real risk and the perceived risk. We also try to address that. So our solution is mainly to mobilize catalytic capital, from the donors, so that from that capital we can issue guarantees, we can provide technical assistance to the bank, so that they can lend more to the to the SME, so that those SME can grow. What we have been able to mobilize is $255 million in equity and $35 million in terms of grant. Thanks to that, we have been able to issue $3 billion of guarantee, and the banks, they've lent $5 billion to SMEs. And the good thing is that we have been able to work with more than 250 banks across the continent with 40,000 SMEs. So quickly, these are our funders, as the Excellency was mentioning earlier. We have NORAD. Quickly, the value proposition is mainly on the leverage. What can we do with $1? So we have 3 options. The funders, they can lend directly to the SMEs. They can go through a financial institution, through lines of credit, or they can come to ADF, where with $1, we can unlock $10 of financing. These are some of the major transactions that we have signed in the continent. With EcoBank, we signed $200 million, Orabank, Robank. So we work with all the major banks in Africa, and today we work with more than 250 banks spread in 44 countries in Africa. So we do track also the impact that we generate, but ultimately, I think it's not about what we do, it's about the scale. What Excellency was mentioning earlier, we know what we have to do, but we have to do more of it. We have good results. We've done 5 billion, but it's still a drop in the ocean. Thank you very much.
I know. We want to learn more, but time is not on our side. Fadila, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you today. Wow, Jules, it's amazing what you have achieved. $5 billion so far deployed. Why are you not doing more than that?
I think the answer is straightforward. It's in terms of resources, because we leverage on the resources that we have, because as much as we guarantee the banks. We need also to show them we have the resources to be able to pay them if they call the guarantee. So yeah, so that's why we cannot go beyond a certain level of leverage.
Thank you so much for your straight answer. You know, when people ask me what I do, I tell them that I'm in a delayed gratification business. When you invest as an angel investor on the continent, there's a high chance that you will lose your money. But what drives your investment is your ability, is the belief that we currently have an emerging pool of entrepreneurs that are building solutions, like the minister mentioned earlier on, that could potentially solve huge problems at scale. So that's why I say I'm in a delayed gratification business. Back to you, Jules. When we talk about guarantee, we often talk about debt. We're referring to debt here. But when we talk about the youth on the continent, we've been talking about innovation. The moment you start talking about innovation, you start referring to tech-enabled solutions. So how is the African Guarantee Fund also providing solutions to scale innovations that are emerging within the continent?
Yes, thank you for this question. Now, what I presented earlier is the product gap. You know, we have a big challenge when it comes to product. Financing to SME today is covered I would say, at more than 90% by the commercial bank. So we also do work with the microfinance institution. We do work with the fintech, with the cooperative to see how we can also leverage from that source of financing. The challenge most of the time is the cost, but the good part is they can process that very fast, and also many when it comes to the small ticket size.
Thank you so much, Jules.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Thank you. So, I really wish I had so much time because I want a lot of these conversations, but time is not on our side. So, to all the young people in this room, I have an ask for you. You are here for another 24 hours or more, 36 hours. You've met everybody. Corner them. Ask your questions. Make sure you get business cards. Make sure you can follow up if you are in your country and you're trying to access their bank or their fund and you're struggling. You know the bosses now. So reach out, yeah? So at this stage, I would like to invite Edmondo Cirielli, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, to give us a wrap-up of our discussion today.
Thank you. Honorable colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great privilege to stand before you at the first edition of the Hamburg Sustainability Conference. I would like to thank Germany for bringing us together to address these urgent issues. The international community is facing multiple challenges: climate change, inequalities, and multiple crises that are affecting progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. There is a need for an ambitious global response. Everyone should do its part: governments, international financial institutions, civil society, and the private sector. Africa is at the center of these challenges. With its fast-growing demographic rate, its youth holds incredible potential and will be instrumental to drive Africa's transformation. As indicated by the previous speakers, effective support for youth in Africa requires many enabling factors, like access to finance, digital technology, education, and training. To strengthen the collaboration with the Africa continent, Italy has launched the Mattei Plan, a new vision of partnership based on mutual interest and equality. The Mattei Plan has placed youth and entrepreneurship at the heart of its effort. So let me mention a few examples, starting with our flagship initiative on the coffee value chain in Africa. This continental program aims to strengthen the resilience of the African coffee sector, which is a cornerstone of many African economies. Together with other G7 EU countries, the international financial institution and private sector, our initiative will support the introduction of new technologies and sustainable coffee production practices. The Mattei Plan will also contribute to address the issue of access to finance together with the African Development Bank. We are activating 3 financial instruments, totaling up 800 million euros to supporting public and private investment in Africa. The Italy Africa Trust Fund is dedicated to financing key projects in sectors such as infrastructure, digitalization, and environment. The Rome Process Multi-Donor Special Fund aims to involve international investors in financing strategic initiatives across the African continent. The Growth and Resilience Platform for Africa is a platform designed to mobilize private capital to support business initiatives across the continent. Another key priority is the digital revolution. Italy is playing a key role in advancing digital inclusion in Africa through a digital flagship initiative in partnership with UNDP, which focuses on strengthening digital ecosystem in 4 African countries. Artificial intelligence as well can play a pivotal role to support youth entrepreneurship. Italy's G7 presidency has launched the IE Hub for Sustainable Development in Africa. This initiative aims to strengthen local AI ecosystem across African countries, providing young entrepreneurs with the tools they need to develop sustainable solutions. Last but not least, education. Last week, I promoted a G7 high-level event focusing on the nexus between education and development. This important event involved relevant African actors for a meaningful and concrete dialogue. In conclusion, as Italy, we are committed to working with our African partners to create sustainable and inclusive economic opportunities for the continent's youth, because we recognize that the future of Africa lies in the hands of its young people. Together, we can build a future that is not only sustainable, but also full of promises and opportunities for the next generation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Germany.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. I'd just like to very quickly say thank you to Your Excellencies for your time. Special thanks to Jules and Ahmed for all the great work that you do on the continent to improve financing, and to Fadila and I'm terrible with names. Melanie. Sorry, Melanie. To Fadila and Melanie and all the young entrepreneurs in this room and around the continent, thank you very much. Earlier last week at the UN General Assembly, the minister was very upset. The head of the UN was upset by the number of women who were on the platform. I think at the Hamburg Sustainability Conference, he would have been very proud. So thank you.